some positive leftist news. With the leftist cooks bringing the flavor.
Hi friends, it's the news, and it's leftist, and it's positive. But why would we need to look at news and current affairs through an expressly leftist lens? Isn't the news neutral and objective? No, it's not.
Plus, as a community who actually cares about other beings and the planet, it is nice to celebrate the wins, to look at what we're capable of accomplishing, and to know that sometimes trying to make a difference does make a difference.
In a 7-2 decision, the US Supreme Court has upheld a decades-old law that prioritizes the placement of Native American children with Native families or tribes in child custody proceedings. The court rejected all challenges to the Indian Child Welfare Act brought by non-Native adoptive parents. The law was passed in 1978 to protect tribal sovereignty in the face of the alarmingly high number of children with Native American ancestry being placed with non-Native families or institutions. The opinion prevents states from removing Native children from their homes. This ruling represents a significant victory for Indigenous peoples and tribal nations and reaffirms the importance of allowing Native children access to their communities. In a press release, the Water Protector Legal Collective, WPLC, celebrated this landmark decision and vowed to continue to support efforts to support the rights and well-being of Native American children.
Native American tribes in Maine took an important step towards greater sovereignty, as the state legislature voted to let most federal laws apply to Wabanaki tribes, putting them on the same footing as other federally recognized tribes across the country. Previously, tribes in Maine had been set apart from the other 570 federally recognized tribes across the country because of the Maine Indian Claims Settlement Act, which stipulated that they're bound by state law and treated tribal reservations much like municipalities. Penobscot Nation Chief Kirk Francis said, "Today signifies a landmark victory in the pursuit of Wabanaki self-determination. A welcome step forward, but of course we need land back, here and everywhere."
Following years of sustained activism by the Palestinian Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions (BDS) movement and other rights organizations, G4S, the world's biggest private and corporate security company, announced that it will divest completely from Israel. The campaign against G4S launched in 2012 by Palestinian prisoners' rights groups and was in support of a massive hunger strike by Palestinian prisoners against their brutal and inhumane treatment. The campaign led to a number of companies, organizations and charitable foundations divesting from G4S in the following years, which successfully forced the company to divest from Israel's prison system, military checkpoints and illegal settlements. G4S had also divested from the consortium that operates Policity, Israel's police academy. Our gratitude goes out to all the activists keeping the pressure up. Free Palestine.
On May 26, Italian transit and education workers held a 24-hour general strike to protest against precarious jobs and push for higher wages. In 25 cities, workers joined the strike and marched through the streets yelling, "Down with arms, up with wages." In Rome, school children and students answered the call of the USB Union and demonstrated in front of the Ministry of Education. In Lombardy, the train service of the Trenord company was suspended for 24 hours, while Trenitalia went on strike from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. In Naples, the entire public transit system, including the metro, bus, streetcar, and cable car, was suspended for 24 hours, as was the case in Turin and Palermo. Workers also struck in Genoa, Florence, Livorno, Bari, and Catania. This militant strike movement is directed against the pro-business, social, and war policies of the government of Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. All power to the Italian workers.
After 18 days of holding 24-hour protests in front of the Canadian Border Services Agency headquarters in Mississauga, international students have secured an important win. The government is postponing all of their deportations until investigations into cases of misrepresentation are complete. Canada had been preparing to deport hundreds of migrant students who had false admission letters submitted in their student visa applications without their knowledge. Despite Immigration Minister Sean Fraser's acknowledgement that these migrants are victims of fraud and that the government's focus is not penalising victims, international students still faced deportation from a government that does not care that they have studied, worked and built lives here. The Najawan Support Network said of the win, "This tremendous victory was unthinkable just 1 month ago. The students achieved it through their courage, unity and resilience." They were supported all along by several grassroots organisations and hundreds of community members, as well as local Gurdwara, artists, public figures and small businesses. The organisation of a Morcha, permanent protest in Canada, lasting over a month, led by Stand for Student, will serve as an example for many on how to wage struggle effectively and will open new possibilities for struggles of different kinds in the future. The Morcha will be studied in classrooms and written about in the history books, but the fight is not over. The deportations have only been postponed temporarily. The government could try to deport some of the students after the investigations are complete. If that happens, the students and community have vowed to restart this Morcha and maintain it until the deportations are permanently cancelled.
Thousands of workers shut down major intersections outside Los Angeles' Crypto.com arena during Friday rush hour on May 26 in a powerful display of solidarity with striking Hollywood writers. As 11,500 TV and film writers continue their strike, the Union Strike Back March, Rally and Dance Party was called by the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. It clogged the intersection of South Figueroa and West 12th Street for hours. Teamsters Local 399 Secretary-Treasurer Lindsay Dougherty, director of the Motion Picture Division, spoke of Teamster truck drivers refusing to cross strike lines coast to coast. To all the bad employers out there, if you're gonna F around, you're gonna find out. This is what solidarity looks like.
Organisers in Rhode Island are claiming a victory as legislators responded to the housing crisis by dramatically expanding tenants' rights. Governor McKee is banning rental application fees, creating a rental registry to crack down on lead poisoning, and providing tenants with a critical opportunity to seal their eviction records. Reclaim ORI is continuing to push to pass legislation to expand tenant eligibility for eviction record sealing, require fair notice for rent increases, protect against unjust evictions, and finally stabilize out-of-control rent hikes. They are also working to set up new systems and programs to fund Rhode Island's public housing authorities to produce new mixed-income public housing. Fantastic work.
From June 7th to 9th, public sector workers in Portugal launched a 3-day strike called for by the National Federation of Independent Unions of Public Administration. Workers demanded a pay rise in line with inflation, in addition to a meal allowance of €9.60. The strike received incredible support, including 60% of health workers, as well as 90% of teaching assistants and administrative workers in schools. There has been an escalating strike wave in Portugal in 2023, with strikes spreading across the entire country and to virtually all sectors of the working class. The workers, united, will never be defeated.
On June 1st, Ben & Jerry's voluntarily recognized the Workers' United Union in Burlington, Vermont, following an overwhelmingly supportive card check officiated by Vermont State Representative Kate Logan. Rebecca Mendelson, a shift manager at the store and organizing committee, said this made Ben & Jerry's one of, if not the first, among Ben & Jerry's US locations to do so. Workers wrote in a letter addressed to Greenfield and co-founder Ben Cohen, "Forming a union will ensure that present and future scoopers have irrefutable rights. Congratulations to the organizers."
The Romanian government has passed an emergency decree to raise teacher salaries after over 150,000 teachers stopped work in an indefinite strike beginning on May 22nd. According to the Minister of Education, new teachers would receive a salary increase of 31.7%, and more experienced teachers would receive a pay rise of 29.4%. Fantastic to see teachers staying united and pulling out a win.
In late May, over 200 trans teenagers and allies across 17 states gathered in front of the US Capitol to hold a trans prom. The event was organized by 4 trans teens, 13-year-old Libby Gonzalez, 15-year-old Daniel Trujillo, 12-year-old Grayson McFerrin, and 16-year-old Hobbs Chicumba. According to Daniel's mother, the idea came to fruition when the teens came together out of frustration and anger over the anti-trans legislation they had to fight over the last few years. American Civil Liberties Union lawyer Chase Strangio and drag performer Peppermint also helped organize the event after the teens reached out to them for their expertise. The event was both a protest and a celebration of trans joy. In the press release, Chicumba said that trans prom was an action, a statement, a protest, but it is nevertheless a party. Attendees were welcomed by Tunnel of Love and crowds holding signs with slogans such as "Trans kids have always existed" and "Trans youth are beautiful." Chicumba stated that it's a moment for transgender youth to feel support from their parents and community, a sentiment which is unbelievably important with the current intensity of today's society. It's a moment for trans youth to relax and have fun, enjoy themselves, and revel in the gaiety of our encouragement. It's a moment for transgender youth to be what they really are: youth.
On Friday the 9th of June, Iceland, in a landslide majority, passed a trans-inclusive conversion therapy ban, putting an end to conversion therapy practices on the basis of sexual orientation, gender expression, and gender identity. Not one representative voted against the bill. The Nordic country has now joined Canada, Brazil, Ecuador, Spain, Germany, France, Malta, and New Zealand in banning these violent practices. A writer and expert on LGBTQ+ issues in Iceland stated, "This ban on all conversion practices is an important reminder that vital legal progress for all LGBT+ people isn't a controversial issue for those that center justice and compassion in their politics." Iceland recognizes same-sex marriage, allows LGBTQ parents to adopt, permits changes to registered gender without medical interventions, and discrimination against LGBTQ+ people is not legal under Icelandic law.
On Friday the 14th of June, thousands of protesters took to the streets across Swiss cities in a massive women's strike. Around 15 events and rallies took place in Basel, opening with a care demo, including prams and wheelchairs. In Lausanne, almost 20,000 people marched through the city. In Bern, around 50,000 protesters demanded Switzerland should begin spending 109 billion a year on childcare. In Zurich, cleaners of luxury hotels went from hotel to hotel, protesting against low wages, overwork, and poor working conditions. This multi-action event featured an astonishing turnout of people in protest for the rights of working women and mothers.
Japan redefines rape and raises the age of consent. On the 16th of June, in a landmark overhaul of sex crime laws, Japan passes laws to redefine rape and raise the age of consent. Rape went from being defined as forcible sexual intercourse to non-consensual sexual intercourse, in alignment with other nations, and the legal age of consent was raised from 13 to 16. This is a landmark move for survivors, as the previous laws did not protect victims coerced into sex, deterred reporting such attacks, enabled perpetrators, and led to inconsistent court rulings. Additionally, these laws also explicitly outline 8 scenarios where it is difficult for a victim to, quote, form, express, or fulfill an intention not to consent, unquote, to sexual intercourse. Such situations include intoxicated victims or the abuse of power where a victim is concerned about the consequences of refusal. The changes also ban photovoyeurism, secret filming of sexual acts, among other things, and last but not least, the statute of limitations, or the legal window for rape reporting, will be extended to 15 years from 10. These wins followed from multiple rape acquittals in 2019 that spurred national outcry and a nationwide flower demo campaign against sexual violence. Since then, on the 11th day of every month, activists have come together throughout Japan to demand justice and show solidarity with sexual assault survivors. A welcome win for this powerful movement.
Countrywide demonstrations erupted throughout Poland following the death of a woman due to pregnancy-related complications, where hospital staff had allegedly failed to tell her that her life was in a critical condition. Women's rights protesters are demanding a repeal of the draconian law that effectively bans abortions. This law came into effect in October 2020, putting an end to abortions in case of fetal defects. Since then, medical staff have been extremely hesitant to perform any abortions, even if the mother's life is in danger, as they could be jailed for something as innocuous as performing the procedure too early. Demonstrators voiced outrage against murder and torture in maternity wards, against forcing women to carry unwanted pregnancies and to give birth, against the ban on abortion, against the criminal rule of the Law and Justice Party, and the cynicism of doctors. Inspired by the activists of Poland, people across London, Vienna, and Stockholm also took to the streets to show their solidarity, and many more protests are expected across the continent.
In late May, Minnesota passed sweeping bills and reforms that have been described by one Minnesota resident, Will Stansel, as, quote, the most productive session anywhere in the country since probably the New Deal. To name but a few of these social programs, the Minnesota legislation includes protections for groups threatened by far-right states and the Supreme Court, legalized marijuana, increased trans care, statewide paid family and medical leave, the strengthening of unions, funded infrastructure improvements, financed free school lunches for all students, the codifying of Roe v. Wade, ensuring Republicans can't endanger abortion rights, and statewide sick leave. As Will Stansel summarized, the scale of their achievement cannot be overstated.
After 27 years of BP sponsorships, the British Museum finally severed ties with the fossil fuel giant, one of the leading art sponsors in the UK. The museum confirmed there are no other contracts or agreements in effect between the museum and BP. Activists celebrated the move as a massive victory after years of environmental protests and campaigns. And it's not just the British Museum that is liberating the British creative world from fossil conglomerates. The Tate, National Portrait Gallery, Royal Shakespeare Company, Scottish Ballet, and Royal Opera House have all been divesting from this fossil fuel giant. The Science Museum is the only major national museum and arts company still supported by BP. The British-Egyptian novelist Adaf Suef, who in 2019 ended his trusteeship to the museum out of protest to the BP deal, said, "It is important that institutions like the British Museum do not give big oil the opportunity to look like a force for good in society. Denying them this platform is important. At this time of global crisis, which particularly impacts the young, the museum should be directing its weight, its creativity, and its resources to helping to create the world the coming generations need to live in."
On May 31st in Seattle, over 1,000 Amazon employees for climate justice staged a walkout and rally in what organizers have called the largest tech worker action since the COVID-19 pandemic. Taking inspiration from the protest, a further 1,000 workers joined the protest from across the US, Ireland, South Africa, China, Germany, Poland, Brazil, Canada, and Spain. The protest gained traction as the company had deleted from their website the Shipment Zero promise, reversing their pledge to the climate-conscious workers to reduce half of their shipments to net zero carbon emissions by 2030. Worker outrage also ensued after the company laid off 20,000 workers and implemented a mandatory return-to-work policy despite the ongoing pandemic. On top of this, despite Amazon's climate pledge to reduce emissions by 2040, emissions have increased by 40% since they announced their pledge. We salute the global protest action for holding the company accountable for its exploitation of people and the planet.
In late May, Denmark activists liberated 2 lobsters from a many supermarket. They found the habitat they came from and released them into the sea. Taking inspiration from the anonymous report shared, activists contacted many, demanding the ending of live lobster sale, threatening a pressure campaign if they fail to comply. Feeling the pressure, Many has pledged to end the sale of live lobsters by August 1st, a clear example of the power of direct action.
For months, orcas have seemingly strategically and intentionally been attacking sea vessels across the coasts of Spain and Portugal. Boat captain Dan Criz, a sailor with the Reliance Yacht Management, observed, "First time we could hear them communicating under the boat. This time they were quiet, and it didn't take them that long to destroy both rudders. Looks like they know exactly what they're doing. They didn't touch anything else." End quote. Killer whale research group Atlanta Orca Working Group has discovered that these actions have tripled, with 52 incidents in 2020 compared to more than 200 in 2022. While most researchers interviewed believe their intent is not malevolent, Alfredo Lopes Fernandes, a biologist at the University of Aveiro in Portugal and a representative of the Atlantic Orca Working Group, believes that a female known as White Gladys, who leads the group of around 40 animals, may have had a traumatizing encounter with a boat or fishing net. In an act of revenge, she may be teaching her podmates how to carry out attacks with her encouragement. While there is no consensus on the motivation, we've certainly done enough damage to the species and the entire ocean environment to warrant revenge. If so, all power to our orca comrades in resisting the rapishness of human capitalism.
Speaking of reasons for whale revenge, citing animal welfare concerns, Iceland's government is suspending this summer's whale hunt through the end of August, a move cheered by marine conservationists, who are pressing for a permanent whaling ban. Humane Society International said this is a major milestone in compassionate whale conservation. Humane Society International is thrilled at this news and praises Minister Svavarsdottir for ending the senseless whale killing, which will spare hundreds of minke and imperiled fin whales from agonizing and protracted deaths. Rudd Tombrock said, "Whales already face so many serious threats in the oceans from pollution, climate change, entanglement in fish nets, and ship strikes that ending cruel commercial whaling is the only ethical conclusion." Friends, if you have good news from the current month, please send your stories to totalliberationpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you to Javi for the positive news jams. Thank you to Cosmo for the positive news background. Thank you to Catherine and Mexi for script writing and production. And thank you to Tristan for editing this video. And to us, of course, for hosting this one. You're welcome.
If you'd like to support the continuation of the show, please go to patreon.com/positiveleftistnews, or you can give us a one-time tip on PayPal. The link is in the description box below.
Get good news. And most of the time, we like to have those good news. Yeah, come on, sometimes.